Record to the cloud. This is Solved in 30, and in this episode, we're going to solve what has been a widespread problem in law enforcement. And it's not actually just in law enforcement. This is one that, as I was talking to the two gentlemen who've joined me here, it's a problem that's everywhere, but it does show up particularly in law enforcement. So I'd like to ask for the gentlemen who've joined me here to introduce themselves from the city of Derby in Kansas, the police department. Go ahead, Lem. I'll ask you to make the first introduction, then Chief Russell.
My name is Lem Moore. I am the Deputy Chief here in the city of Derby.
I'm Brandon Russell. I'm the chief here. I've been with the department since 1999.
And they're good enough to ask if we could go through this facilitation to solve the problem of communication multi-generationally within the police department. And this is, you'll all recognize this from every industry. You know, you've got folks that you might consider veterans in that industry. And then you have the folks that are the newbies in the industry. And the two of them not only don't really speak the same language together, they don't always have the best impression of each other and their approaches. And so to solve the communication problem that happens there, we're going to go through a solved in 30 facilitation and really get right down to what are the actions that can be taken to solve this, particularly in police departments. So, gentlemen, you ready for this?
Sure.
Right on. I'm going to share my screen, and I've typed up the problem the way that the two of you articulated it to me, and that'll be the starting point for our solved in 30. So, sharing my screen. I have it highlighted here, the problem being the communication multi-generationally. And if solved, police departments would see this change from veterans thinking that newbies don't know anything, and then newbies thinking that veterans have an outdated approach. It would change to looking like a reduced rumor mill and reduced gossip, reduced misunderstandings, so that instead, teams are now solving problems. That would be brilliant, wouldn't it? So we've got here connected to OpenAI, our Ringorang content generator. And this customized GPT is also connected with the brain of Ringorang. It doesn't serve OpenAI and train the model, it's private. And it allows us to go at problems like this with our customers privately. Now, this one, of course, we're broadcasting. So join us, if you would, in creating what we call a goal design to get right down to those actions. And it starts with a goal. So what you're seeing on your screen here is a proposed goal from our system, and that would be to communicate effectively across generations to reduce rumor, conflict, and misunderstanding and shift teams towards solving problems together. Does that about capture it, gentlemen?
Yes.
Yes.
We'll tell it yes. All right, the next step in the process is identifying results. Like, how would you know the goal was met? You have to have certain results that are measurable that get achieved. So the system has proposed three results here. So I'll ask you to look at first result number one, reduce the rumor, gossip, and assumption-driven conflicts across generation. Two is increase mutual respect between veteran and newer officers. And then three, shift daily interactions toward clear, direct problem-solving communication. Do those sound like they're in the right world?
I believe so.
Yes.
Very good. So we're already on the right track, just on how we prompted it from the beginning. If you were going to identify one of those results and say, you know, if that result were delivered, it would probably make the biggest difference in reaching the goal. Which one of these results would that be?
And to me, I'd say it's the increased mutual respect because that kind of builds on the other two. If you have that increased respect between the generations, you'll have less of the gossip, you'll have less of the rumor mill, and you're going to have better communication between people to be able to solve those problems rather than discounting what people are saying.
Very good. And you agree with that, Lem?
I
Anything
do
else to
agree
add?
with that. Yes, I agree with it. But the result number one is a pretty close runner-up. But like the chief said, that if you have number two, it helps reduce that number one. But that number one, the rumor mill, it could be a beast.
I get that. All right, so we're going to drill down on result number two, with number one being a close second. So what the lever is we're going to pull on now is with result number two is finding the habits that need to be formed in officers in your department so that you get that result. And we have a rubric that you may remember here from the work we've done together. It's attitudes, skills, and knowledge. That's an acronym we call ASK, the ASK methodology. And we found that the balance among attitude, skill, and knowledge habits is really what makes the difference. And actually, if you had to point to one, we found that attitude habits make the biggest difference. Maybe to the point you were just making about results, for instance, respect, having respect for another human being is in the world of attitudes. Because one of the things we found in our work, especially when we did the clinical trials with this methodology in Ringorang, is that we all have an attitude about everything, whether we know it or not. The moment I look at you, I may say, well, I've got an attitude about your tan shirt, Brandon, and I don't think of it that way. But that's what goes on in our brains. We have an attitude about everything. So the opportunity here is to try to melt down attitudes that are in the way and build up attitudes that are going to be supportive of getting the result. So for the habits you're seeing on your screen, I'm going to ask you to review these and then we'll talk about drilling down on them. So there's an attitude habit, assume value before judgment when interacting across generations. So tell me if that registers or if there'd be different wording you might put to it.
I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, no, on that one right there, assume value before judgment when interacting across generations.
Hmm.
That's a good one because I mean you will get situations where officers that have been on for many years are considered senior officers. You know that
Hmm.
word seniority, senior, and then you
Yeah.
have the new person coming in. That senior officer sometimes interacts with them as if they're their supervisor. In all reality,
Hmm.
there is a separate supervisor that's in charge of both of them. And that senior person is a great guide, but not the supervisor. And so if they
Uh-huh.
both value what each brings to the table, you're going to help that interaction between the generations. Yes.
Very good. All right, then on the skill habit there, ask for input and experience in a direct, structured way during calls and briefings. Does that seem like a fit?
As far as on calls, I don't know that you're going to see that a whole lot. Briefings, yes. Debriefings, yes. But actually, out on the call, people are pretty much doing what they need to do, and they're not going to be asking for a lot of input.
Okay. So as a habit, though, if you're trying to figure out like a skill for them to take on, that one doesn't seem as applicable. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Not to me.
Right.
Okay. And then how about the knowledge habit below? Recognize generational differences in communication styles and expectations. This would mean habitually they know um, how to recognize.
I think it needs to go beyond recognition because
Hmm.
just recognizing that there's a difference doesn't necessarily solve that. It's being able to apply it on top of recognizing it.
Very good. All right, so then let's see if we drill down on the attitude habit because that's the one that the system seems to have gotten right. And let's see if we can go a little bit further with that. Focus on attitude. So on this one, it's assume value before judgment when interacting across generations. What the system's done now is offered up, here are a few topics for you to review that if you covered these with your officers, then they would have a good chance at forming this habit around attitude if they applied it to their work. First one being default assumptions about the other generations. That's going to be one topic. What are the default assumptions you already have? Well, like for instance, earlier I said we've all got an attitude about everything. So you walk in the room, you've already got an assumption about them. Separately delivering style from actual competence. I'm sorry, separating delivery style from actual competence. And then respect signals in everyday interactions, tone, timing, response. Do these work?
The 2.11 and 2.13 definitely do.
Hmm.
Those are that's the main focus of where we're at right now in supervisors communicating to subordinates and senior personnel communicating to some of the newer personnel. That separating delivery style from actual competence. Uh, Got to lean a little bit more on that one.
I can see how we could apply that. When you think about a day to day, when somebody's delivering something, you think, wow, they're just not coming across very well, but they
Yeah.
may be very competent in what they're doing.
So, okay, got you. So that it's these two definitely, this one possibly, or an adjusted version of 212. Yes.
Yes.
All right, that's what I'm going to tell it to do is so keep 211 and 213 and we may use 2.1.2 but adjust. So this is what we're doing each time I put a prompt in here is we're teaching the system how to solve this problem. And it's finding its way down to what are individual actions that can be taken that will make a difference. One of the beautiful things that AI does when it's configured well is that it will go out to the whole world's information, pull it in, and then make some decisions. So you want to get really surgical about the path you bring the AI down so that it's really solving the right problem and not trying to solve some hallucinatory problem. So thank you very much for helping us train this. Now we've got these topics here. It actually made a little adjustment here just because we told we wanted to. We didn't even say what the adjustment was. Take a look at this second one here. Judging competence based on communication style versus observed actions. That's interesting.
And is that trying to say that you should do that off the communication style, or is it versus the observed actions, or trying to combine the two?
Yeah, it's interesting because if we're talking about, I'm zooming up for a second here to the habit, which is this is to support them having the habit of assuming value before judgment when they're interacting across generations. So this topic is judging competence based on communication style versus observed actions. I'm not sure that that's what you'd want. I
That's
mean,
not
yeah, it seems like it's the opposite.
right.
Yeah. 2.1.2, reverse it to focus on observed act. Actually, you know what we'll do? I think we ought to just remove this topic. I think it's struggling to try to make a point that doesn't need to be made. So instead, we'll just focus on these two topics to get this habit formed. And now what it's going to do is move on to what we call actions and obstacles. So with those two topics as a focal point, actions and obstacles are always done in pairs in the ask methodology because what we're doing is asking a learner to take an action. And then we're identifying an obstacle that's in the way of them taking the action. And it's almost always a mental obstacle of some sort. It's a perceived obstacle. It isn't necessarily true in the world, although it might be. It's definitely what's going on inside that person's head. And because of that, if not interrupted, the person's just going to avoid the action. And we want them to take certain actions so that they'll form new habits. So by identifying the obstacle, we can speak to it. And then when you speak to it, then there's a chance to get somebody over it, right? Other than just saying, go do this, and then they've got resistances quietly in their mind that might sabotage it. So we have three sets of actions and obstacles. Please take a look at these. The first one being say to yourself, what might they know that I don't before you respond? And what the obstacle is there is I've seen this before. They're going to mess it up or they're going to do it wrong, something like that. Does that seem to fit as an action obstacle pair?
Yes.
I think so.
All right, let's go to the next one. Action here is ask one neutral question before giving your opinion. And the obstacle is they're thinking in their head, it's faster if I just tell them what to do.
These are all the obstacles you're talking about are all the things that go through a field training officer's head when they're training somebody.
Yeah. And these are all specifically to this topic 2.11.
Yep.
There's a third one here. Action is Name one specific thing the other officer did well on the call, or it could be a meeting or whatnot, or on their shift. Name one specific thing. And the obstacle is if I say it, it sounds like I'm lowering the bar. Does that fit or does that need adjusting?
To me, it doesn't really fit
No.
because nobody's going to do that.
Okay.
That's not the way we operate.
So we would remove 2.1.1.3. And let's take a look at this next topic too and see if anything is adjusting or removing and how we're doing. Action first is let the other officer finish speaking before responding. And the obstacle is I already know where this is going. That's similar to the one we had up above, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we're going to say also remove 2.1.3.1 as it's redundant. This one, action obstacle 2132 is use the officer's name when giving input or feedback. And the obstacle is just that that feels forced or awkward. Is that a fit?
I don't see it,
No.
but
That could be
Not really.
redundancy either.
Remove 2.1.3.2. So see, we're getting down to it. We're getting surgical here. The things that make a difference. Here's one. Action. Acknowledge input with a short phrase like got it or makes sense after they speak. The obstacle is I don't agree, so I'm not going to validate it. Now, I might actually throw in something here. I don't actually think that's the appropriate obstacle for this action. If you wanted them to take this action of acknowledging input with got it and makes sense, you don't want them having something in the background saying I don't agree because then this is disingenuous.
right. Now, you're not going to say that unless it actually does make sense.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're going to be telling them, no, we need to do something different.
yeah. The internal monologue has to match what they say or it doesn't work.
Now,
All
in the
right, so
same
let's
lines, when you're
go
saying
ahead.
that, when so when you're looking at that and it says, got it, that makes sense, and then the obstacle, it's not saying that if what if that person thinks that? Is that what they're saying? Is the person or the new officer that you're speaking to, is that what they're gathering from you, saying, got it, that makes sense? Or where's the obstacle actually coming from?
Do you mean generally or just specifically to that?
Yeah, because it says action and then it says obstacle.
Yeah.
Obstacle from whose perspective? From
Yeah,
mine?
very good. I got your question now. So the obstacle is usually what's in the mind of the learner when they're in that situation. So for example, here, if we go down to 213 here, the action is say got it, only if you can also think that could be useful. I'm not sure I agree with how it revised that. I think it's
I
doing
don't.
better with these over here. It should be the action is what we want the learner to do when they're in that situation. And the obstacle is what's going on in their head that will stop them from doing it. And if we identify that, then you got a shot at dealing with that. Like if you're doing it in Ringorang, you're speaking to that obstacle and asking them to take the action anyway. If you're doing it in person, you do something similar. You say, look, I understand that this is probably what's going on in your head, or this is what you've experienced, but here's what we'd like you to try anyway, and here's the value. And if that sounds familiar in any way, you might recognize that television commercials have been going that way all of our life. You think about how a television commercial goes in 30 seconds, it's like this. Here's your problem. Here's a solution for you. Try it now. Your life will be changed. And that's a format that we're so familiar with that you can very quickly get to somebody's psychology by addressing it that way. We understand this is what's going on in your head. It's your problem. Here's a solution to your problem. And here's what your life's going to look like if you put it in place. And you can do that in 30 seconds with someone and get them to like, oh, all right, I'll give it a shot. Or they may still disagree with it, but that's why TV commercials, for example, play so many times because you got to keep getting the information in front of a person so that their brain starts to accept that it's possible. It gets familiar to them. And then with enough familiarity, there's a sense of safety. With enough safety, then when the moment comes, they're more likely to make that different choice than they otherwise would. Interesting that it comes out of advertising, right? When we went into when this methodology was first developed, it took the best and most successful formats of advertising, which was, in fact, at the time, the only industry in the world that was measuring changed behavior reliably. And it's changed consumer behaviors. Like, the more it would touch us with commercials and banners, then it would measure how long it took before we bought something, or first even tried it, looked at an advertisement, and then when we bought something, and then if we bought again. These are all metrics that are very carefully worked out among advertisers. And when we looked out across the world and said, well, where are some really serious areas where they do this kind of by the drip type of training and then eventually get somebody into changing their behavior? There was no place else except places where you have hands-on coaching. It's the only reliable way outside of what I just described with advertising is hands-on coaching. But the problem with hands-on coaching is it's not very scalable. You got to have the right coach there with you at the right time to make the biggest difference. So we developed this format where you could put advertising as a method and put it with the right kind of serious coaching in very serious environments. And that's how Ringorang was born. And we found in order to make a real difference in humans' lives, we had to take this through clinical trials to see what made the difference. So what we've done so far, gentlemen, is we've gotten from here's the result we want to get our goal. Here are the habits that have to get formed. Here are topics we have to cover. And now we're right down to what human actions have to be taken. And we got to address what's in the way, their obstacle. And so far, I think we've got two action obstacle pairs that we've approved. Let's take a look here. Say to yourself, what might they know that I don't before you respond? And then this one is ask one neutral question before you go and give your own opinion. So if we say, I'm sorry, I'm asking you to validate that again. Are those two topics valid? I'm sorry,
I
those
think
two
so.
action obstacles?
Yes.
Very good. All right, so 2.1.1.1 and 2.1.1.2 are all right. And now what I want to ask you is, let's say that both of those actions were put in place. So if you think about now, City of Derby Police Department, and these two actions were habitual, like everybody, whether they were a newbie or a veteran, says to themselves, all right, maybe what this person is talking about is something I don't know. Instead of their knee-jerk reaction, which is, I know what they're going to say, and it's not going to be right. If they were doing that, would that make a big difference?
I think so.
Yes.
All right, now let's add to that. Imagine that that's already happening and it's made a big difference. Now you've got people taking on this action. Before giving their own opinion, they actually ask a question, a neutral question, meaning they already think they know the answer to it, right? They're not leading them to something they already know. They're going to ask them a question with real curiosity instead of it's faster if I just tell them what I want them to do or what I want to do. If this was going on regularly in your police department, would that make a big difference?
I struggle with that one a little more as far as what they're going to be asking.
Very good. Let's drill down to it a little bit. Like, what this one is leaning toward is curiosity. So, based on what you've seen in the department, what would you say is a way that you would have people communicate with curiosity that would fit your environment? Can you think about that?
And one of the things we've actually taught some people to do is to ask them, okay, what do you think you ought to do? Rather
Uh-huh.
than just giving them the answer of what to do.
All right, let's see. with so instead of I'm queued up here to prompt it. So instead of asking uh, or telling him what to do or asking what you should do, just then ask, what do you think I ought to do? Like,
Yeah, so like from an FTO perspective, when you get out on
Mhm.
scene and the officer's not sure what to do, and you can see that, rather than telling them what to do, okay, well, tell me what you think you ought to do. What do you think you ought to do? And get
Yeah.
them to respond to that.
All right, let's see if it makes that adjustment here in a way that works. So this reworked one says, ask, what do you think you should do before giving direction? And the obstacle is, well, it's faster if I just tell them what to do. That's what's the obstacle. Does that work better?
You have that obstacle, and to me, that obstacle goes a little further because again, we were talking about if they're the same rank, well, then why is this person asking me what I think I ought to do when we're the same rank?
Ah, okay. So what would be a more general way that this would work? It's not just about telling what to do, but what kind of a conversation would you want to see happening around curiosity, where people are curious what the other person
Actually, I
is?
think you could put it as, where do you think we should go with this, or what do um,
Yeah,
something to
I
that
gotcha.
effect. I,
Right.
Yeah, it's a little more generalized. I gotcha. See what the system does with that now. So the adjusted one here is, where do you think we should go with this? Ask that before you're giving directions.
I think so.
Does that work for you, Lem? Or do you have anything to add
Yes.
to that?
No, no, it opens it up a little bit.
Very good. So then I'll ask you the same question I did earlier when we started adjusting this. If this was happening in the department, like on a regular basis, you have people like curiously just saying, well, where do you think we should go with this? What do you think we should do about this? Instead of knee-jerk reaction of, I'm just going to tell them what I think. Would that make a big difference?
As long as they're genuinely listening, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it depends on the circumstances and the timing. I mean, if they're standing around the station and they're just having conversations, and or they're at a scene that isn't a high priority scene, then that would work. But if we're in the field of making quick decisions and rapidly evolving situations, then it's not going to work as well.
I see.
I'm thinking when I look at this and in that question, I'm thinking more of the idea of they're out on a report call and you got two officers that have the same information. One's got uh, a lot of experience, one doesn't, but sees things differently at times. And having the time to ask that question, it's going to be like Lem said, a different situation. If we're going in knowing that we're arresting somebody and they're right there, things got to happen. You're not going to have time for something like that.
Yeah. If they're about to arrest someone, I'll use that as an example. Yeah. All right, let's see what kind of adjustment it might make because this is narrowing us down to what's really going to make the biggest difference. And there are other actions, of course, that can be taken. This system even proposed what could be happening in those different contexts. Let's see if they work. In this one, it says, when time allows, ask, where do you think we should go with this? Instead of just figuring you don't have time and you want to take over the situation. Contextually, does that work?
Yes.
It does, yes.
Cool. And then over here, the action is in urgent moments, give a clear direction and then ask for input after the call. When they say the call, I guess they mean the call that you make. If I take
Right.
over now, there's no point in circling back later is the obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
That works?
Yep.
Yes.
Anything to add to that, or does that work?
I can't think of anything to add to it.
Okay, very good. Then what we've got here, it's going to sound redundant, but this is what's part of the process. This is how we get down and to solving a big problem in 30 minutes. is that you really go back and check every time an adjustment is made. Is this actually going to make a big difference, or have we just gotten, I don't know, shall we say, overindulgent in our own adjustments? So if you look at this second one, if people were doing this in your department on a regular basis, just checking in with each other, and what do you think we should do about this? How do you think we should go about this? Would that make a big difference?
I think so.
Right. Yeah.
That's really great. You got two actions here that would make a big difference in your organization. And then third one here is if it's more time critical, then they give clear direction and then they ask for input afterward.
Well,
Would that make
and
a
on
big,
that third, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
go
On
ahead.
that third one, before if we move any further, and Chief might be okay with it. I mean, because it's really not that huge of a deal, but then
Hmm.
ask for input after the call. I don't like that input after the call statement,
Okay.
just because if I'm giving input on, hey, we're going to go through the door and someone sees something that I don't see or observe, I want to know that now. I don't want to know after the call. I want them
Okay.
to tell me.
So, all right, what we've got here currently, so we can figure out how to adjust it. In urgent moments, give a clear direction and then ask for input after. You're saying
Or
that doesn't really work because if you need to give everything right there and then, is what I'm hearing
yes,
from you.
yes.
Okay.
Oh, it's kind of the same idea, if I'm understanding correctly, that when you're down at the range, anybody can call a ceasefire if they see something somebody else doesn't. You got that instant input you've got to have feedback on.
All right. If All right, let's see if it takes that and processes it well. If not, then we'll drop this one off because we've already got two. And usually we come to the end of these and we get a couple of actions that make a difference. That's a big thing. But we've got a third one we're wrestling with. Let's see. If intel is needed, give it immediately and then return to their input after. Now it's wanting to hold on to the idea that you come back with curiosity afterwards to find out. Is that useful or is that not
I
so
think
applicable?
you could change that tremendously, I guess,
Hmm.
in putting it from the aspect of uh, if you're telling them what to do, then make sure you debrief the why after and ask for input at that point of what could have made this situation different, better, what did that type of thing. Because that way you're dealing with how it turned out and not so much what do you have right that second. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes.
Yes. Let's see if it catches that prompt. All right, so the third one is now if you need to tell them what to do, debrief after on what could make it different or better next time. Yeah, but it didn't catch the urgency of that situation. I want to make sure that one, three, it's in the context of an urgent situation where officers have to respond quickly. Let's see if that caught it. All right, in the third one now, it says in urgent situations, give clear direction, then debrief after on what could have been done different or better.
Yeah.
That fits the mold. Yep.
There you go. There's no time to explain. We just move on afterwards. Do you find that that's an obstacle that will show up sometimes? Like once we're past the moment, I don't want to come back and talk about it.
No, not in law enforcement. I think everyone's built a culture on we have to debrief afterward, whether it's debriefing for stress management or if it's debriefing for safety and accuracy.
Very good. So that tells me that we're really right down to the granular molecules of this now. This isn't the right obstacle for it. What actually would get in the way of an officer doing this action? Where in urgent situations, they give clear direction and then they debrief on what maybe could have been done better after.
I think you can fall right back to the whole generational thing of, well, I don't want to listen to them because we don't need to go back over it. We've done this before versus the person who's new.
And the reason they wouldn't want to go back over it is because they don't necessarily have what that respect for a veteran or the veteran not with the newbie. That's the idea.
That's kind of my
Yes.
thought.
I want you to test the prompt that before I finish this sentence. I'm saying change the obstacle to we don't need to go back over this because their opinion is not what? It's not right. It's incorrect. It's I have a better way. What's the obstacle?
Because they should know what we are doing, or they should know policy, or they should know the process.
Sorry.
Yeah, maybe it's just they should know. We don't need to go back over this because they should know. You both see that as a valid obstacle that shows up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that if you could get them past that, it would make a big difference.
Yes.
Yeah, that can actually be used in households with parents, automatically assuming their kids know, and things just get missed when people are getting taught, things getting taught to teenagers as they're growing up.
Really solid observation. So true. We deal a lot of times with at-risk students, people who are coming out of incarceration. Now we're beginning with foster kids that are getting up toward being aged out, and they've all dealt with some sort of trauma. And if you could train up both the kids and the parents, which is what we're pursuing, to be able to communicate with each other where they realize the other one doesn't have it in for them. They're actually doing the best they can. It would really change things. Gentlemen, I want to point out something. This is really great. At the highest level, you were identifying, all right, there's a communication issue, and it is across the whole industry. So I asked you in your department if these individual actions, if they were done reliably, would make a big difference, and you said yes. And you got three of them here. Just checking in with you now, if those were across all police work everywhere, would that be a sea change in law enforcement?
In my dream world, yes.
In your dream, you see, I got your words there. Yes. Because it's in your dream world, right? It doesn't seem like these things are possible, right? Because it's so common to be the other way. True?
Well, and it's so much, it talks about these being habits and changing people's habits and the way they think. We can say this all day long, but getting people to actually do these things.
That's right. That's the trick of it, of course. So when we do this with Ringorang, the whole point is you got to keep getting all the different actions you want people to take and the reasons that they won't do it in front of them over and over again. But what you've done here is I want to point out what's remarkable about it. You've narrowed it down to three actions. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any other actions you could take, but I love the word you used, Lem, where you said in my dream world, yes, meaning like it doesn't seem even possible, but it is. And the reason we've found that big problems don't get solved is because they don't get narrowed down to just a few things that would make all the difference. You can kind of get that here.
Yes. Well, yeah, and it's almost like the chief has implemented book studies for the executive staff and command staff level to where we get different perspectives and different views. And what I'm
Yeah.
seeing here is if you can take all those different leadership books, all those different guide books on how to train your mind and how to communicate and funnel it all down into like you're saying, then you would have the answers that you need. And that's what this is doing, it sounds like.
It's exactly right. You got it. And that's why we came into existence is to make sure that you can get it down to something straightforward and actionable and doable because you only have a few of them. You don't have thousands of them, right? Gentlemen, well done. Thank you. We've in within 30 minutes just solved an intractable problem. So the job now is we got to make sure we get this out here to actually solve the problem. But you've come up with the solution. Thank you very much for your help and lending your expertise to this.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, so that's what it is. We'll end up cutting the recording here, and then it'll go out with a social post. Would you want us to tag anything in particular so that like it goes to the city or your police department?
If you can just send us the link to it, that'd be great.
Great. All right. You got it. All right. How was the process for you? Straightforward enough? Simple? Difficult? What was it? I always like to ask that.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but when you start thinking about the size of that and then trying to figure out how to apply those questions, sometimes it's hard to narrow it down far enough because there's so many different things that it can apply to.
That's
You know,
right.
an example, having to go between an urgent situation and a normal taking a case, or the difference between talking to somebody in squad or talking to somebody out on the road. So that's where it really kind of gets difficult to figure out how to split.
And you have those three key things there that are you're able to work towards. So now I guess what you're saying is you'd use the app, input things in the app to work towards that. Because like for us, we have a lot of different areas that we've worked on. Like we've used the Ringorang app. We've
Mhm.
done newsletters weekly to cut down on gossip. So the chief has from my desk every week that if he hears anything that's gossip, he'll include it in there. So there's clarification, gossip mails done on that topic because
Yeah.
he's talked about it. So there we have counters that fit each of those categories that we've already implemented and have in place.
Yeah, really good. So, as a way of answering that as a question, y- you know how we've used Ringarang with you guys, and we've gotten feedback from different officers, and some of them said, "Yeah, I'd like to see more of this," or some people it's like, "I don't think we need all that kind of content." So, our job with you is to really narrow it down to what makes the difference. And so we went through one pass at that and got some feedback. Another pass would be like start narrowing it down to this and tie it to, for example, when Chief Russell, you put something in a newsletter and it says this is how you deal with gossip, or this is how you eliminate it, or here's the impact if you keep doing it, things like that. We would have that our question sequences would actually refer back to that because you want to keep reinforcing something that you've already said instead of it seeming like it's something new. Keep reinforcing, and then pretty soon people get it. Oh, okay, leadership is serious about this. Very good. I appreciate spending the time with you, gentlemen. Hey, on that score, we were talking about possibly presenting what we've done so far. Was there a submission that was made to a conference? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, what we did is we submitted it to IACP when they asked for speakers. And
Uh-huh.
then we wait, what was it, May last year? Generally about May is when we hear back whether it's accepted or not.
Okay, good.
Once you put your input in what it is, they really have no more contact with you. They're kind of waiting to see what else comes
Sure.
in and then deciding what their programming is going to look like at that point.
You
Yeah.
know, and honestly, because I'm sitting here, we did this, and I'm wishing that. So we talked about the Ring app, we talked about
Hmm.
wellness, how those work together. If we would have done this as our proposal, I think it would have probably gone. I don't know what they're going to say about what we submitted, but this is more effective. This would have been really good for the audience, and
Yeah.
that and just interacting with law enforcement that are in the room there and walking through this like for 1 hour. I think it would have been a really good presentation to have. So if by chance they come back and they accept it, I think we modify and probably include this.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to do with you, gentlemen, obviously, is continue and do this very thing. You know, any to whatever extent this was touched on, obviously not enough from what I'm hearing from you. And I haven't looked through all the content that was delivered to you. So if this is what's going to make a difference, and that didn't come out in the first pass of the goal design, then we want to tackle this. Where does it stand with you guys in terms of getting a budget to pay for moving this thing forward? Is there a budget that we can be pulled from?
There's not at the moment. That's why we keep trying for grants.
Ah, I see. So have you been working with my team on grant getting?
We had put in for a mental health grant because we were going to include this as part of that,
Uh-huh.
and we did not get that grant. So
Oh,
we're into the
that's
next round of submissions as far as they're just coming out. I saw the cops grants just hit and some others. So we're trying to figure out. I know the mental health one is back out there again. So it's something we're going to try to reapply for.
hmm.
But with the federal government, you know how that goes. It takes forever to get responses.
Do you guys ever look to state grants? I'm asking actually from a different point of view now because we're in the process of doing a lot of grant submissions. We've actually just kicked in to do this now. Some of them for my company, and some of them are for a nonprofit that we have that supports what we do, so it can scholarship out to nonprofit organizations. So I'm asking because I'm thinking out loud with you here. Maybe there's ways that we can support looking for grants too. Uh,
If you find something that is great, because we do not have a grant writer, we do not have somebody
ah,
dedicated to specifically to grants. So
okay.
it's as we come across stuff or as something is sent to us,
Yeah.
we start delving into that. All of the federal grant stuff is usually sent to us in an email as far as, hey, all the stuff through the COPS office is out, or all the
Hmm.
stuff through DOJ is out. Even the JAG grants through the state, it's a federal grant, but the state manages it.
Hmm.
When we hear about them, we look at them, but we really don't have anybody that has the time to dig in. And I went through a grant writing class at one time, and I talked about all these different places you can go look, for like private industry and stuff like that. And we just don't have anybody that has the time to do that type of thing.
Yeah. All right. So then I'll take that as an action for us to look and see if there are some grants, if there's any way that we spot things that you guys don't. So if you don't mind me or one of my teammates lobbying ideas to you, like, hey, we spotted this, spotted that, who would they send that to
Okay,
check?
so yes. So what I'd like to see is if by chance they're, let's say for instance, they find a grant that's
Hmm.
workable, that's doable,
Yeah.
they could work through me on that.
Okay.
And I can give them, and the thing is, like Chief says, is that there's so many other hats that we're wearing and accomplishing that
Yeah.
if they do see it, it won't be like, hey, here's this grant, work with it, run off with it. It'd be more like, hey, there's this grant, and then we're both working and logging in together. I'm
Yeah.
giving input, but they're working on the grant itself and then I can submit it, under my name or
I
whatever.
think that's totally workable because like we've just started assigning that too. And we actually even have an external person who's helping us with that now too. So yeah, I think that would be workable. I appreciate your willingness to try this because I when I got when it was escalated to me what the reports were and how things went, I kind of got this sense that like, okay, certain things went well, but there were other things that just felt like they missed content wise. Like the content wasn't spot on, right?
But one of the issues that we saw with it right away is that, like they sent us the first set of questions
Uh-huh.
and we went through those, but developing the content, it really takes somebody here dedicated that that's what they do with you guys.
Hmm.
And again, we had, anybody that you talk to within our staff wears about 8 to 10 different hats. They
Yeah.
don't have the time to specifically concentrate on one thing.
Yeah.
We were able to just get a training captain that she does a lot more of that than other things, but she still has other things that she does.
Okay.
Uh, so that idea of delving into the content and trying to make sure everything's correct, we really need somebody that's dedicated to that, and we don't have the position for that. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. It's what we call a subject matter expert. So, and
Yeah.
it's always hard to find time for a SME, as they're called for short, an SME, in any organization. So we've built our system to be able to use just enough time from a SME to make it approvable, but not so much that that we're taking up, too much of their manpower. But the pros and cons of that are what you're pointing out here. If you don't have a lot of the SME's time, then sometimes your content can either lose relevance or it can drift and it's not
Uh-huh.
spot on. And that's part of why no, it's not part of why, it's exactly why we've built the AI we have because the AI learns. So we need it to continually learn. Like we've already fed it the feedback we've gotten from you, for example, already, and I will now feed it further what we've just distinguished here, and it just gets smarter and smarter and smarter about City of Derby Police Department.
Right. And if you're able to, and I know in the actions, I mean, it tells a little bit about it, but like even on the question,
Hmm.
when initial, some other people were like, well, I've never seen that before. That's nowhere in policy. Well, because it was pulled from impact, the impact site. And so they would have
Ah,
not seen it unless they've gone to impact. So
okay.
on the question, obtained from impact or relating to impact, that way they at least know, okay, that's my focus on this instead of, is this a wellness thing that we're working on in-house, or is this something from another outside agency that, okay, basic common sense, maybe I should do.
Very good. Yeah, that can be remedied pretty easily. We've had similar situations with other organizations where you just reference it, like in the clue, that this is from Insight versus this is policy in someplace else. That way it gets their mind set up for it. Yeah. Okay, I'm glad you said that. I took a note down about that here because I want to make sure that gets relayed to my team. So future work we do with you, as I said, is going to all be about teaching the system so that it can be as close to a subject matter expert as possible for you. You can never let AI of any sort, including what we've built, become the true subject matter expert. It's just that you get it so close that it really stays in its lane. And then you do need to have an efficient process of bouncing it off someone else on your side for approvals. The trick there is making it efficient. Lem, were you the one doing the approvals? Was it all being sent to you?
Yeah, initially I got the first two set of
Okay.
questions, and then from there, we didn't get any more. I think it was just redoing all the other questions that we've already done in a different style. And it's just some of the people were frustrated because two of the answers, and I know that's the way it's set up. You have three or four, and then two of them are so close
Yep.
that they're right, but you're going with the most right. And in law enforcement, that's good in a way because you're going to go with the most right one. But then when you're on a time crunch, we're going to go with the very first one we see that's right, and then we're going to click on it. And most of the
No,
time it's
that's very interesting that you pointed out that way because that you're right that that is part of the science of it, but it really does have, we do have to train the system to know that there is only one that truly is right. The other one might sound right, but it can't be right. Otherwise, it just sets people up to fail, and that may have caused some frustration. If our system was giving those, that's called a distractor. So you have the correct answer, you got a distractor, and then the other two should be pretty easy to eliminate. That's the science of it. So if the distractor was actually correct, that's a problem. So that has to be
true.
changed. Yeah,
Yeah, that our in-house subject matter expert would be able to differentiate that.
that's
And
right.
me, myself, I'm just scanning through the questions, looking through, and boom, moving on. Not really no time to dig or dive into it. We're
Okay.
not going to be as effective as we want.
So I have to guess that this is not totally unique to City of Derby. I mean, there's probably lots of police departments that where you got people wearing multiple hats.
It's going to
Right.
be any small department to medium-sized department.
Yeah.
Large departments, I still think it happens, but maybe not quite as much.
So assuming that then you're talking now about a majority of departments out there, right? Not a
Yes.
majority are not the large ones. So we want to master supporting your staff the way it is. So that means we'd have to I'm going to ask you this question speculatively. If, for example, we're building a next set of questions, our system's gotten a little smarter, but still we need a subject matter expert on your side to check and approve. If that process were something like 10 minutes a week, would it work?
Yeah, yeah.
Probably.
Mhm.
I think we can get it at 10 minutes a week. We've seen this with other customers, but it takes us delivering things in a certain way. I also am going to ask your preference on this. Would you want it to be 10 minutes at one point during the week, where you're looking through several questions and making approvals or notes? Or would you want to do it at like 1 or 2 minutes a time, a few times a week?
I think that's going to depend on who it is.
Okay.
So which would come down to the topic, because our defensive tactics person versus our use of force people versus our policy people are different. So it's going to
Yeah.
depend on what it is we're doing, who that subject matter expert is in order
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
and
I
I
got
was
that.
thinking if I were to, let's say, for instance, the funding came around and we implemented this and went with it, the city went with it. It wouldn't just be one subject matter expert. You'd probably have three, so that way you get three different perspectives each week to make sure, like if one person believes, well, that is correct, and someone else doesn't, then we can work on that question. So we'd
Okay.
have two or three people that would try and figure out, would get that list.
So then if I got what you just said correctly, that would look like, let's say we had three different subject matter experts that we're going to have to look at this, and maybe I'm making this up. One of them would have to look at a majority of the content, so they're doing 10 minutes a week. The other one's doing 10 minutes every 2 weeks, based upon how much content there is in each subject, let's say. And then you have a third subject matter expert that maybe is looking at it also 10 minutes every 2 weeks, so that we would have to know who they are and what content sets to send to them. Is
Oh
that the
no,
way you're
well,
thinking of?
no, I was actually looking at every week, those three look at what you're sending. So you
Oh,
have
I see.
three different eyes on that week's content.
Because
Oh,
you may
wow.
have one of them that says, "Hey, yeah, the detractor is wrong. I can differentiate," and the other one goes, "Yeah, no, that's too close."
Really good. That's really good. I got that. Okay. And would that be workable if you had three subject matter experts? Could they spend the 10 minutes a week to do it?
I think so.
Yeah, we're hoping so right now. I mean,
I
because I
know we're
mean, that's
speculating
still
because you
better than
haven't done it
one.
this way. I got you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still better than just one person because, if I skim over it but the other two really have more time to look at it, at least you're going to get, a concentrated response from at least one of those three.
And does it seem doable that all three of them would get into a room together to do it and spend 10 or 15 minutes, or
And we,
would it
and
be?
the thing about technology, every last one of us has a phone. If by chance, if with only 10, but with it only being 10 minutes,
Yeah,
let's say we have a night shift person, I'd log in at 9 o'clock at night along with the third shifter and we'll go over it.
I
So
got you.
we have resources outside of the busy time of the day to be able to utilize. Because we could just log into our phone and do something virtually with each other.
That's really clear. I love it. Okay. All right. My actions, I'm going to let you gentlemen go now. This has been terrific. And this was a lot more information than I thought I'd get. And it really helps. I'll share it with my team. We're going to come back to you with any grants that we can find. And we'd appreciate it if you, in your current pursuit, you also, if you're able to find them. But we'll start looking on our side. And then I'm going to share with them what you told me about, like what would be a procedure for doing this right in the next iteration.
Right.
Really
So are
great.
you a member of the church or you just show up every now and then to sing?
Ah,
That's
yes.
great.
No, I'm a member of the church. I'm in love with that
Okay.
church. I live out on the east side, so sometimes we do it at home. It depends
Okay.
on, whether we drive all the way out there. But yeah,
Yeah.
because Phil Stacy, who is
Mhm.
he's the worship pastor. He's an old friend of mine. When we were in Hollywood, he came down there when he did American Idol, and he was one of the
Mhm.
finalists, and he stayed at our house. And
Okay.
that's I got to know him and his wife, and that was the beginning of our relationship. And so when
Yeah.
when I came to Wichita 5 years ago, I went looking for a church, and he was just coming back from Kansas City, where he was for years, and was going to
Right.
join Central Communion. I said, "Well, I'll go." Then I heard Pastor Bob speak, and I said, "That's come on! I want a pastor who's like a
Mhm.
basketball coach. This is
Yeah.
great. I loved it."
Same
So yeah,
feeling.
Yeah. Lem and I both go there. My wife's a pastor there too. So
who's your wife?
Elizabeth Russell, she's the kids pastor
Oh
up
yes, of
in
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
252 and
fantastic. Yeah. Oh man, okay, fantastic. Well, then I'm gonna have to look for you. Do you usually go for the 9 a.m. or the 11 a.m.?
I'm usually there from when my wife starts at 7 a.m. on. So
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I go from the 11:05,
Yeah,
Farther
yeah.
than
That's
them.
right. That's when we're halfway through our worship. Lem has seen me because I go up and I join the worship team like once in a rare while. Phil just teases me because he's like, "Yeah, Robert, you're traveling all over the world. I can never get a hold of you." But I really love having that opportunity. It does my soul good.
We appreciate you for doing it. It's awesome seeing you out there.
Thank you, man. Thank you to both of you. I'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great rest of your day, huh?
You,
take care.
you too.
Bye bye.